Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON furniture, beauty furniture, Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Gaur Pramanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter number 27, titled Understanding Material Nature, text number 4. Artehi avidyamanepi Artehi avidyamanepi Samshritirna nivartate Samshritirna nivartate Jyayato visayanasya Dhyayato visayanasya Swapne nartha gamoyata Swapne nartha gamoyata Artehi avidyamanepi Samsitirna nivartate Jyayato visayanasya Swapne nartha gamoyata Artehi avidyamanepi Samsitirna nivartate Jyayato visayanasya Swapne nartha gamoyata Mataji's. Samsritirna nivartate Jyayato visayanasya Swapne nartha gamoyata Arteya vidyamanepi Samsritirna nivartate Word for word translation. Arthe, real cause. He, certainly. Avidyamane, not existing. Api, although. Samsiti, the material existential condition. Na, not. Nivartate, does cease. Jhayata, contemplating. Visayan, objects of the senses. Asya, of the living entity. Swapne, in a dream. Anartha, of disadvantages. Agamaha, arrival. Yatha, like. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence. But because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease. And just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. Purport. The example of a dream is very appropriate. Due to different mental conditions, in dreams we are put into advantageous and disadvantageous positions. Similarly, the spirit soul has nothing to do with this material nature, but because of his mentality of lording it over, he is put into the position of conditional existence. Conditional existence is described here as Jhayato Visayan Asya. Visaya means an object of enjoyment. As long as one continues to think that he can enjoy material advantages, he is in conditioned life. But as soon as he comes to his senses, he develops the knowledge that he is not the enjoyer, for the only enjoyer is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, he is the beneficiary of all the results of sacrifices and penances, Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam, and he is the proprietor of all the three worlds, Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. He is the actual friend of all living entities. But instead of leaving proprietorship, enjoyment, and the actual position as the friend of all living entities to the Supreme Personality Godhead, we claim that we are the proprietors, the enjoyers, and the friends. We perform philanthropic work thinking that we are the friends of human society. Someone may proclaim himself to be a very good national worker, the best friend of the people and of the country, but actually he cannot be the greatest friend of everyone. The only friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated and he will get all help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. The power of friendship is limited. Although one claims to be a friend, he cannot be a friend unlimitedly. There are an unlimited number of living entities, and our resources are limited. Therefore, we cannot be of any real benefit to the people in general. The best service to the people in general is to awaken them to Krishna consciousness, so that they may know that the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend is Krishna. Then this illusory dream of lording it over material nature will vanish. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksul Mritam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you everyone for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class today. I'll read the translation again. So we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 27, Text number 4. Translation: Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence But because of his mentality of lording it over mature nature, his mature existential condition does not cease. And just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. So previous chapter was titled Fundamental Principles of Mature Nature. And this chapter is also titled Understanding Mature Nature. So just from the chapter title itself, we can understand what Lord Kapila Dev is going to talk about to Mother Devahuti. So he's explaining about the workings of Maya or Durga Devi, the workings of the mature world, how things are created, we saw in the previous chapter. And in these couple of opening verses of this chapter, we are understanding how the illusory energy is binding the conditioned souls. So one might ask this question, what is the necessity of understanding all this? Why are we spending so much time discussing about Maya, discussing about mature energy, how things are created, how we're entangled? Why can't we just talk only about Krishna? We're always told to talk about, be fully engaged in Krishna Katha, always hearing and chanting about Krishna. How is this related to Krishna? How is this of benefit to us? So Prabhupada, one time, in a couple of places, he explains that Krishna Katha doesn't just mean only hearing pastimes of Krishna or chanting about Krishna's pastimes, but understanding how the mature energy works. That is also Krishna Katha. Another place, Prabhupada says that this is also Kirtan. So according to common understanding, Kirtan means, just as we had 10, 15 minutes ago, sitting together or standing up, singing and dancing in front of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, with kattals, mridanga, so on and so forth. But Prabhupada says that is one kind of Kirtan. You sing and chant the glories of the Supreme Lord. Another kind of Kirtan, Prabhupada says, is talking about the material world, talking about how we're entangled. Prabhupada says this is the second type of Kirtan. And Prabhupada says that both is necessary for our spiritual advancement. We need to have that direct hearing and chanting about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. And at the same time, we need to understand about this mature world, about mature energy, mature nature, how Maya Devi works, how the illusory energy is distracting us from Krishna's lotus feet. Prabhupada, he gives the example of how this material world is like a prison house. And I was just hearing one class of my Guru Maharaj, he was explaining how this material world is like a prison. And what Lord Kapila Dev is trying to do in these two chapters is he's trying to help us understand more about this prison. Because, now we're here, stuck in this material world, stuck in this prison house of Durga Devi. And to help us get out, we need to have some understanding about this prison. How this prison is operating, what are the functions, what are the loopholes out by which we can escape the prison. So all of that, Lord Kapila Dev is explaining in these two chapters. Previous chapter, he was talking about creation, about the different elements which make up this prison, how this prison is structured. And in this chapter, he's going to talk about the process of how to escape from this prison of Durga Devi. What is the loophole? And one example my Guru Maharaj, I was hearing recently, he was giving, is that of jailhouse lawyers. So this is a term that maybe not many people are familiar with. So jailhouse lawyers doesn't mean like a lawyer who specializes in jails, but it refers to prisoners, like someone does some crime and they have to go to jail, they stay in the prison. And most prisoners, they'll just stay in jail and they'll just accept defeat. I did the crime. I'm here in jail, 10 years, 20 years, or for the rest of my life, I'll just have to live here in this jail. So let me just try and enjoy as much as I can in this jail. So most prisoners, they go that direction. But my Guru Maharaj explains there are few prisoners in jail who don't accept defeat. But they think, I can't stay here, I can't just be here for the rest of my life. I need to somehow or other get out of this jail. Somehow or other I need to escape this prison and get out. So very few people in the jail, they'll think like this. Most of the others, they'll just accept defeat. Okay, I'm in jail. Okay, rest of my life or next 30 years, okay, this is where I'm going to be. Let me just enjoy as much as I can. But if you gutsy people who have the courage, they decide that, no, I'm not going to stay here, for the next 20, 30 years. I'm not going to stay here for the rest of my life. I need to somehow or other get out. So how do they get out? What they do, in most prisons, they have a library where the prisoners can go and do some reading in their spare time. So during the day, they will do their daily chores in the prison. And whenever they have any free time, 2 hours, 3 hours free time, these prisoners, they will immediately run to the library. And what books will they read in the library? They would go straight to the law section and start reading all the law textbooks, start reading all the law books, and start studying all the laws and all the different clauses in criminal law, so on and so forth. And by studying these law books, they try and figure out some loophole by which they can re-put their case towards the judge, and somehow they can escape. Because generally, my Guru Maharaj explains that when these criminals, they get charged, they'll be assigned a public lawyer for themselves. And these public lawyers, they won't get paid so much, so they're not so high-class lawyers. So most of the times, these public lawyers won't be able to defend the case of the criminals. On the other side, the other lawyer of the other party, there'll be some, high-up lawyer who'll be getting paid lots of money, so he'll be much more expert, and most of the times they would win. So these few prisoners, in the spare time, for many months, many years, they would just go to the library and just study law books about crime and different laws and clauses, and they'll just study and study and study. And by studying for so many months about law, soon they become even more expert than actual lawyers who are out there. And they know all the clauses, all the different, things in the law books. And then finally, after some time, they figure out, okay, I have been unfairly charged in this area. This is one clause here, one loophole here in the law. If I present my case like this to the judge, I can get out. And that's what these prisoners do. For 1 year or 2 years, they study the law books. Then finally, when they're found some clause or some loophole to get out, and then they ask for their case to be re-put towards the judge. And this time they go in front of the judge and they defend themselves. They themselves are the lawyer, and they themselves present their case, and they start quoting from the law books, and they escape. Instead of staying in jail for 10 years, 20 years, just by 1, 2 years they study and they escape the prison. So same way my Guru Maharaj is explaining that devotees of the Supreme Lord, they're like that. They're not like karmis who just say, okay, we're here in this material world, let's just enjoy as much as we can and let's just, live like animals, just continue on in the cycle of birth and death. But no, my Guru Maharaj explains that devotees, they don't accept defeat. And just like these jailhouse lawyers, they go into the Prabhupada library and they start studying all of Srila Prabhupada's books, understanding how Maya is entrapping us, how this material energy is working, understanding more about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. And this way, just like these jailhouse lawyers, by studying for 1, 2 years, they're able to re-put forward their case to the judge and escape. In the same way, devotees of the Lord, just in one lifetime, they just study Srila Prabhupada's books for one lifetime, and just in one lifetime, they escape this prison house of material existence and go back home, back to Godhead. So the importance of studying Srila Prabhupada's books. So many parts of Srimad Bhagavatam or the Shastras in general will find very philosophical, and at those times, our mind will, give us a bit of a tough time, thinking that, this is so much philosophy, why do I have to study this? Most of this doesn't make sense to me. Why can't there just be pastimes only? So, to help us get rid of this doubt, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in one verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he explains that Siddhanta bolite chitte nakara alasa, iya hoite Krishna lage sudrida manasa. So I remember when I finished Bhagavatam for the first time and I started reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, I was very excited that, finally I finished Bhagavatam, 12 cantos, 18 volumes. It took, I think, 2 years while I was studying in university. Just when I finished my university, I finished. And that time, I was like very excited to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now finally read about Gaur Leela, all the wonderful pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. Then I pick up first volume of Adi Leela, and that whole first volume is just full of philosophy. No pastimes, just all philosophy, 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 philosophy. Few pastimes is there, like Nityananda Prabhu coming in the dream of Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami. So like that, there's a little small pastime, but otherwise 95% just full philosophy. That whole first, thick volume of Adi Leela. So, naturally when you're just reading so much philosophy, in your mind you're thinking, when will the nectar come? When will the pastimes come? Why is there so much philosophy? Why couldn't they be a mix of both, some pastime, some philosophy, some pastime, some philosophy. So what is the importance of all this philosophy? So Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami, I think he knew the mind of his readers, in the future who will be reading CC, that, they will have this challenge. So that's why he clears this doubt in this verse. So he explains, Siddhante bolite chitte na kara alasa. So Siddhanta means philosophy, the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Na kara alasa. Alasa means lazy. So Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami, he instructs us that, my dear reader, please don't be lazy when it comes to reading, studying, and understanding all this philosophy. So then the question comes, why? Why shouldn't I be lazy? What is the importance of studying this philosophy? So in the second line, he explains the importance of why we should study philosophy, the importance of why we should understand material nature, about creation and all these things. So Siddhanta bolite chitte na karalasa iha hoite Krishna lage sudrida manasa. So he says there's two benefits that we get if we study philosophy from the Shastras, just like we're studying now in this section about material nature, given by Lord Kapila Dev. So number one, what it does, sudrida manasa, it makes our mind very strong. It makes our faith in Krishna very strong. So that is the first benefit. The more we study this philosophy of Krishna consciousness, first benefit we get is it makes our faith, our determination, our faith in the process of bhakti very, very strong. And it makes us much more stronger, grounded devotees. Second benefit, he explains, is it fixes or focuses our mind on Krishna's lotus feet. So because of these two benefits, Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami, he says that, my dear reader, please don't be lazy. Na karaha alasa. Don't be lazy when it comes to reading and understanding all this philosophy. Try your best, put your mind to it and try and understand what this philosophical section of the Shastra is talking about. And if you just put a little effort in understanding this, then this will help your mind be fixed at Krishna's lotus feet, and this will also boost your determination. This will also boost your faith in the process of Krishna consciousness and in the process of bhakti. So understanding this, we can try and up our inspiration a bit to try and understand what Lord Kapila Dev is talking about in this section. So this is just as important. Prabhupada explains, just like studying or hearing about Krishna's pastimes is important, in the same way, understanding the workings of material nature, how Maya is binding us, how we're bound up in this prison house, this is also important. Because if we understand this information, we can escape from this prison house of Durga Devi. Now in today's verse, I'll read the translation again. Actual living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease. So in this verse today, Lord Kapila Dev is explaining that actually as spirit soul, we're all transcendental to this prison house. We don't belong here. We're all eternal spiritual beings. And what is that thing that is binding us within this prison? He explains, the thing that is binding us here is this mentality of lording it over material nature. And in the purport, Prabhupada further elaborates and explains, another anartha that is binding us here is the desire to be the enjoyer. So you'll hear Prabhupada talking about these things many times in his purports, and the Shastras also, they talk about these things. So there's basically three things which is binding us to this material world. The desire to be the enjoyer, the desire to be the proprietor, and the desire to be the controller. So because of these three desires, the Shastra explains, we're bound up in this material world. And as we're reading in the purport, Prabhupada explains that actually Krishna, he is the only enjoyer. Krishna is the only enjoyer, he is the supreme enjoyer, he is the supreme proprietor, and he is the supreme controller. But because as conditioned jivas we have come here, we want to imitate Krishna. So we try to be the controller, we try to be the enjoyer, we try to be the proprietor, and we try to be like Krishna. And we fail because that's not our constitutional position. Our constitutional position is to be Krishna's servant. So because of these three anarthas, the Shastra explains, we're bound up. This is what is shackling us in this prison house of Durga Devi. I was hearing one lecture by Radhashyam Prabhu this week. He was talking about the importance of sattva guna. And mainly in his lecture he was talking about rising early in the morning, having a strong morning program. Morning time is in the mode of goodness, and he was talking about how to take advantage of the morning hours. So his lecture is on YouTube. I can't remember the exact title, but it was something to do with mode of goodness or sattva guna. He was giving a class for youth. And in the lecture, Prabhu was explaining that when we wake up in the morning, what is the first thing we do? First thing we do is we go immediately to the bathroom. And we start brushing our teeth. Why do we brush our teeth? Because if we don't brush our teeth, our mouth will stink when we come outside. Then after brushing our teeth, we go inside the shower and we take a bath. If we don't take a bath, what will happen? Our body will stink. So if we don't brush our mouth will stink. If we don't clean our body will stink. So in the same way, Radhashyam Prabhu explains, just like in the morning, we cleanse our body, so our body doesn't stink. In the same way in the morning, we're supposed to clean our minds, clean our consciousness. Otherwise, our consciousness will start stinking. Otherwise, our minds will also start stinking. And Radhashyam Prabhu was explaining that there are three things that makes our mind stinky, or that makes our mind or consciousness stink. What are those three anarthas? Lust, anger, and greed. So these are three things that make our mind stink, or make our consciousness stink. And these three anarthas, Radhashyam Prabhu explains, we can map it to the other three anarthas we were talking about, which is binding us to this material world. So remember, just a few minutes ago, we were talking about how this verse is explaining, Prabhupada is explaining that due to three desires, we're bound up in this material world. The desire to be the enjoyer, the desire to be the proprietor, and the desire to be the controller. Now, these three desires, Radhashyam Prabhu says, we can connect with these three anarthas, lust, anger, and greed. Because of the desire to be the enjoyer, lust comes. So lust, you can connect with the desire to be the enjoyer. And because of the desire to be the controller, anger comes. So desire to be controller, you can connect with anger. So, you want to be the controller, you want to be the boss. We start ordering devotees, you should do like that, you should do like that. Or people in our family, you should do this, you shouldn't do like that. So we start bossing people around, we start, showing our Ishwar above, and that how we're the controller, we're the boss. And if someone doesn't listen, what happens? We become angry. So this is how anger is connected with the desire to be the controller. So when we try to imitate Krishna and be the supreme boss, when we try to imitate Krishna and be the control of everyone and everything, and when we fail, then we become angry. And lastly, we have the desire to be the proprietor. And because of that desire to be a proprietor, the anartha of greed comes into our mind or consciousness. So greed, we can connect with the desire to be the proprietor. That I want to possess more clothes, more shoes, more property, vehicles, so on and so forth. I want to have more and more possessions. So that's connected with greed. So because of these three desires, these three anarthas come. Lust, anger, and greed. And Radhashyam Prabhu explains, because of these three anarthas, our minds, our consciousness, they start to stink. Unless we cleanse our mind or consciousness in the morning, just like we cleanse our mouth, so our mouth doesn't stink, just like we cleanse our body, so our body doesn't stink. So in the same way, Radhashyam Prabhu explains, early in the morning, before we do anything else, we need to work on cleaning our minds, cleaning our consciousness. Otherwise, during the day, when we start dealing with other people, other living entities, we'll be dealing with them with a stinky mind. And we'll be projecting, the stench of lust, we'll be projecting the stench of greed, we'll be projecting the stench of anger upon other living entities. So how do we clean our minds? How do we clean our consciousness? By chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the process that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us for this day and age. Chaito Darpana Marjanam. This is the most effective, most powerful way to cleanse our minds. Especially Radhashyam Prabhu was explaining this chapter, we should do early in the morning. So then, after we finish our morning program, when we go out into the material world, when we start dealing with other living entities, other living beings, then we can deal with them properly. Instead of an agitated mind full of lust, anger, greed, we can deal with them, with a nice, peaceful mind, purified mind. So that's why he was explaining. Every day in the morning, we should try and wake up early in the morning, and after cleansing our physical body, we should come and start chanting Hare Krishna. Have some sort of morning program where we chant our rounds, hear some lectures, or read Bhagavatam. And this way, this will help us cleanse our minds early in the morning. So during the day, we won't be affected by these anarthas, lust, anger, and greed. Regarding chanting, Prabhu was explaining that our chanting should be audible, clear. We should chant audibly, we should chant clearly, and we should chant attentively. So I like how Prabhupada, he explains chanting. He makes things very simple and easy for us. Prabhupada says that when we chant Hare Krishna, when we chant our japa, two senses we're using. We're using our tongue and we're using our ears. And Prabhupada says, with your tongue, you just focus on pronouncing every single syllable of the Maha Mantra very clearly. And Prabhupada says you have to chant it out loud enough so you can hear. So Prabhupada says, don't chant in your mind, but open your mouth and chant it loud enough for yourself to hear the mantra. So Prabhupada says, with your tongue, you make the tongue focus on pronouncing every syllable of the Maha Mantra very nicely, very clearly. Sometimes, when we start chanting very fast, some of the syllables, they aren't being pronounced very clearly. So we have to be a bit careful and a bit mindful. And we have to focus and see whether my tongue is pronouncing every syllable of the Maha Mantra very clearly and distinctly. Prabhupada uses these two words, distinctly and clearly. We should chant with the tongue. So that is the duty of the tongue, Prabhupada explains. In his purpose, Prabhupada says, we should employ our senses to engage in Krishna service. So just like, you have a manager, of some company, and to get things done for him, he starts employing, he starts putting the ad out in seek.com or this.com, and he starts employing different people to work for him, to get things done for him. In the same way, Prabhupada uses that term employ, that we should employ the different senses of our bodies to serve Krishna. So instead of us being a slave of our senses, we should be the boss and we should employ the senses. But for karmis, it's the other way around. Karmis, instead of them employing the senses to serve Krishna, they're being employed by the senses and they're serving the senses. So in this way, we engage our tongue in pronouncing every single syllable of the Maha Mantra clearly and distinctly. Then next, Prabhupada says, we use our ear to just hear attentively every single syllable. So every single syllable which is coming out of the mouth, we hear very attentively. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's explained that from the mouth the holy name comes, and then it enters into the ear, and from the ear it goes into the heart, and then heart transformation happens. Our heart gets cleansed, and Krishna Bhakti starts arising within the hearts of the devotees. Okay, so we can meditate on that. Okay, with my tongue, I just have to focus on pronouncing every single syllable very nicely, And with my ear, I just have to focus, let the syllables just flow into my ear, and let me take in all the syllables. Let me hear very attentively. And when I hear attentively, it will go into my heart, and it will cleanse my heart of all these anarthas, like lust, anger, and greed. So one time Prabhupada said that 90% of our spiritual advancement is dependent on chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So that's quite a lot. 90% of our spiritual advancement is dependent on how we chant our rounds, how we chant our japa. In one place, Prabhupada, he explains like this. So the importance of chanting the holy name. One other example I was hearing, Radhashyam Prabhu, he was giving the example of, like sometimes when you go to some area where there's like some bad water or some stinky or foul water, like some swamp area, there'll be a lot of bugs, especially a lot of mosquitoes. They will gather around stinky or bad water, polluted water. And Radhashyam Prabhu was comparing that stinky water to our minds or consciousness, and he was comparing these mosquitoes to material desires. So if we go to a place where there is foul or dirty water, there will be a lot of mosquitoes, and these mosquitoes will start coming and biting us and causing us a lot of pain and harm. So in the same way, Radhashyam Prabhu is explaining that if we don't focus on chanting attentively the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then our mind will become just like that filthy swamp or just like that foul water. And just like mosquitoes start coming or being attracted to that filthy water, in the same way material desires will start coming into our minds or consciousness. And just like the mosquitoes, they start biting us, in the same way these material desires will start coming and they'll start biting us. They'll start harming our spiritual life. They'll start harming our spiritual consciousness. And they'll start causing us pain and frustration and suffering in our lives. So if we want the mosquitoes to go away, then we have to cleanse that water by, again, chanting Hare Krishna, by having a nice morning program. Another example, just like, in a house, you have the dirty dishes, and on the dirty dishes there'll be some gravy of dal or sabji on it. And if we don't immediately wash the plate, then that leftover food will start sticking onto the plate, and it will be hard to scrub off and cleanse that plate. So then what happens when something is stuck to the plate? You fill up the sink with water, hot water, and you just immerse the plates or the utensils in that water for some time. And after some time, that plate or the vessels, after they're soaking in that water after some time, then immediately all the gunk and all the filth which is stuck to the plate, immediately by themselves, it starts coming off. Just like in the kitchen, sometimes some pots, there'll be some burnt khichdi at the bottom or burnt dal or sabji, and it'll be stuck, and initially when you try and scrub it out, it doesn't come off. So then you just immerse that pot in hot water and just leave it for 10 minutes. Then you come back, and then you'll see it, you can easily scrape off all the junk which is there at the bottom of the pot. In the same way, Radhashyam Prabhu explains that we should immerse our minds, in spiritual sound vibrations early in the morning. And when we completely submerge ourselves, in this spiritual sound vibration in the morning, then immediately all these anarthas like lust, anger, greed, immediately by themselves they'll start flying off. By themselves they will start coming off. The last part of the purport, I'll finish with this. Prabhupada is talking about how Krishna is the supreme friend. I'm reading from the purport. The only friend is Krishna. One should try to raise the consciousness of the conditioned soul to the platform of understanding that Krishna is his actual friend. If one makes friendship with Krishna, one will never be cheated and one will get all the help needed. Arousing this consciousness of the conditioned soul is the greatest service, not posing oneself as a great friend of another living entity. So Prabhupada is explaining in the second half of the purport how Krishna, he is the supreme friend of everyone. But just like we try to imitate Krishna by being the enjoyer, just like we try to imitate Krishna by trying to be the proprietor, just like we try to imitate Krishna by trying to be the controller, in the same way, Prabhupada explains Although Krishna is the supreme friend of everyone, we try to imitate Krishna and we pose ourselves as big friends of other living entities. And Prabhupada explains that actually our power of friendship is very limited. We have limited time, we have limited resources, and how much friendship, how much help can we offer other living entities? So Prabhupada explains that actually Krishna is the only true friend of everyone, and if we want to show friendship to another living entity, the way we can be an actual friend to someone is by helping them come closer to Krishna. That is how true friendship is shown, Prabhupada is explaining. A true friend is one who helps his friend or helps the other person come closer to Krishna. Because actually Krishna is the only one who can help all of us. In Uddhava Gita, there's one beautiful verse where Uddhava is glorifying Krishna. And Uddhava, he's sharing his realization, he is explaining of why he is surrendered at Krishna's lotus feet. Why is he Krishna's devotee? So Uddhava, he explains that Anavajam, he explains different qualities that Krishna has. So first quality he explains that Krishna, you're Anavajam. Anavajam means there is no discrepancy, there is no fault in your personal character. If we look at all of us, all conditioned souls, all of us, we have good qualities, but we also have some bad qualities. That will put off other devotees or put off other living entities. None of us are perfect. We all have anarthas. We all have certain bad qualities. But Uddhava explains that, my dear Krishna, you are that only one single person who has no discrepancy in personal character. There is no fault in your personal character. You're the supreme pure, and therefore I can fully surrender at your lotus feet, confidently. Whereas everyone else, they have that good quality, but they have that fault. They have that good quality, but they have that fault. They have that good quality, but they have that fault. But Krishna, you have no faults, you have no discrepancy in your personal character. Therefore, I surrender at your lotus feet. Another quality he explains is Anantaparam, which Prabhupada is talking about in the purport also. So Ananta means unlimited. Anantaparam means that Krishna is not limited by time and space. So all of us, we're limited by time and space, which means if we want to show our friendship to another person, we can't be his friend, we can't be right there next to him or her 24 hours a day for the rest of their life. Is it possible? No, it's impossible. But Krishna, he is that one friend who is beyond time and space, which means Krishna can personally be with every living entity 24 hours a day for their whole life, for the next life, next life, eternally. But can we do that? No. Only for a short period of time we can be there with our best friend. Maybe 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 5 hours a day, we can spend time with our friend and be close with them. But we can't be with our friend 24 hours a day. So we're limited by time. But Krishna is not limited by time. So he can be with all living entities 24 hours a day eternally. Therefore, Uddhava says, therefore, my dear Krishna, I'm surrendering at your lotus feet. Therefore, you are my supreme friend. And space. Krishna is also not limited by space. So all of us, we have so many loved and dear ones, and we can't be in the physical proximity of a dear or loved one all the time. A father can't, or father or mother, they can't be with their child all the time. The child has to go to school, to a different place. And after some time when the children grow up, they'll go to another city, another town. And so there's always gap in terms of space. We can't be physically present with our dear and loved ones all the time. But Krishna is not limited by space. He is always there, personally, with all living entities as Paramatma. So that is quality number 2, Anantaparam. And another quality Uddhava explains of why we should surrender unto Krishna's lotus feet, why Krishna is the supreme friend, is Sarvagya. Sarvagya means Krishna is all-knowing. He knows everything. So we try to be friends with someone, or we have many dear loved ones, but many times it will happen to us that our best friend, or our wife, husband, our brother, sister, our son, daughter, our mother, father, they will misunderstand us. We will be thinking and doing something in a particular mood, but the other person who is very dear to us, they won't fully understand what our intention is, and they will take it wrongly. And this way there will be, some friction between us and our dear and loved ones due to misunderstandings. Because that dear and loved one of us, they're not in our hearts, they can't read what's going on in our minds. But Krishna can. So he knows exactly every single thought which is in our minds. He knows exactly in what mood and what consciousness we're doing everything. And therefore, Krishna is the best friend, Uddhava explains, because he is all-knowing, he's in our hearts. He is personally keeping track of every single thought which is in our mind. He's personally keeping track of what mood, and what bhav, how much endeavor, how much effort we're putting to do his service. And therefore, he is able to perfectly reciprocate with his devotees. Whereas other persons around us, they're not in our hearts, they're not in our minds, they can't understand fully how much trouble or how much pains, how much effort we put to do a particular thing for them. They won't have that full realization. But Krishna can, because Krishna is within our hearts. Therefore, Uddhava says, again, because of this third reason, Krishna, you're my supreme friend, therefore I surrender onto your lotus feet. So in this way he gives a few different reasons. Another reason he gives is Ishvara, that you're the supreme Ishvara, you're supreme controller. So therefore you can protect me at all times, places and circumstances. You're the master of the universe. Any demon or any crazy person, any crazy situation that comes upon me, I'll just chant your name, I'll call for your help and you will protect me. So Krishna is a supreme protector because he is the master of the universe. Everything is under his control. So whom better to take shelter of than him? Whereas, Uddhava explains, the other persons around us, they're not the supreme Ishvara, they're not the supreme controller. They can't even control their own bodies, what to speak of controlling nature and everything around them. So what protection can they give me? Only Krishna, he can give me real protection because he's the supreme protector. So in this way, very nicely in Uddhava Gita, Uddhava, he establishes this fact of why Krishna is the supreme friend of all living beings. And Prabhupada explains that we should stop trying to imitate Krishna and trying to boast ourselves as a great friend of others. Instead, if we want to actually be a friend of someone else, then we should assist that person come closer to Krishna. We should assist them in their spiritual lives. That is true friendship, Prabhupada explains. I'll finish with one short pastime. I was reading recently, Prabhupada, one time he was in I think it was like a university or a big hall program. Prabhupada is giving a public lecture, and devotees, there was like a stage where Prabhupada was sitting, and devotees, they made a very nice opulent Vyasasana for Prabhupada to sit on and give the lecture. And the whole lecture, Prabhupada was talking about the Varnashrama Dharma, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and how the Brahmanas at the top, they're first class, the second class of people in society are the Kshatriyas, then third class is the Vaishyas, then we have Shudras, and how all of them, they work together in Vedic society for the functioning of the society. So in this way, Prabhupada is giving this nice class about Varnashrama. And then at the end of the class, when it was time for questions, one person in a very challenging mood, he put up his hand and he started challenging Srila Prabhupada. That you were talking about first class, second class, third class. Definitely you must think that you are first class. And you must think that we are all fourth class. That's why you're sitting on the stage on a big, opulent chair and we're all sitting down here. You think you're first class and you think we're all fourth class. That's why you think, right? Like that. He starts challenging to Srila Prabhupada. And this devotee who is reciting this pastime, he's explaining, at that time, the anger was coming over him, he was just getting ready, he was looking at Prabhupada for any indication, to go and just smash this guy, just jump on him and just beat him. But Prabhupada, he reacted completely opposite to what this devotee thought. Prabhupada immediately, he became very humble, and immediately he started pacifying this person in the audience, and by telling him that actually, no, I don't think I'm first class. Actually, I'm not first class, I'm not second class, I'm not third class, I'm not fourth class, I am fifth class. I am even lower than the fourth class. Like that, Prabhupada started telling this person in the crowd. And this devotee was explaining, he could see a tear coming from Prabhupada's eyes. And Prabhupada, out of humility, he started saying Why am I fifth class? I am fifth class because I am servant of everyone. I am the servant of all living entities. I am the servant of all of you. Therefore, I am fifth class. Like that, Prabhupada started preaching to this person and pacifying him. So this is the mood of pure devotees of the Lord. Although they get so much respect and worship, from so many different followers, but internally in their hearts, whatever worship or glory that comes towards them, they don't take it for themselves. They just pass it on to their spiritual masters. They just pass it on to Guru and Krishna. And internally in their hearts, they just see themselves as servants of everyone. So that same mood that Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating this pastime, we can also try and cultivate. That, I'm not a great friend of someone, I'm not a great enjoyer, I'm not some big controller or big proprietor. Who am I? I am Dasanu Das. I am simply the servant of everyone. Everyone else, all living entities, they're all Krishna's parts and parcel, they're all Krishna's servants. And my identity is Dasanu Das. My identity is that I am servant of everyone. If we can try and practice or train ourselves to, function in that frequency, then that will be very pleasing to Guru and Krishna, and we can make a lot of spiritual advancement. And Prabhupada, personally, he was demonstrating this in this pastime. Okay, it's just around 9 o'clock, 8:58. If there's one question, we can take before we stop. Okay, Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.